A story for you, a story for everyone. It's a short story, but it's got a good message. It's about how the world changes, and it's called Because of You. Because of You. It goes like this. Because of you. Each time a child is born, the world changes. When you were born, there was a new person for your family to love and to care for. And because of you, there is one more person who can love and care for others. Because of you, there is one more person who will grow and learn, and one more person who can teach others. Because of you, there is one more person to share with. And there's one more person who can share feelings and ideas as well as things. Because of you, there's one more person who needs help sometimes. And one more person who can help others. When you help, care, share, and listen, you are being kind. When two people help, care, share, and listen to each other, they're friends. When people from different countries help, care, share, and listen to one another, it's called peace. Even something as big and important as peace begins with something small and precious. It might begin because of you. The end.
All right, let's form our arch of love and sing the children out to their exploration.
As we reflect upon the joys and sorrows each of us carry with us, which we hold in our minds and hearts, let us also be mindful of the concerns that have come to the attention of our pastoral care associates. Colin asks us to send prayers and healing thoughts to Jean Bullock Wilson, who's just been diagnosed with lung cancer. And on this Memorial Day weekend, let us also be mindful of all those among us who have served in the armed forces, and mindful of those who have family members and friends, sisters and brothers, sons and daughters, as well as elders, who have given their lives in service of their country and its people, the people they loved. Let us hold them all in our thoughts and prayers. Our spoken meditation this morning is written by Reverend Martha Munson. And after this meditation, there will be a brief moment of silence. Please join me now in the spirit of prayer and meditation. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. In this time of meditation, may you rest in the grace of the world and be free. In weakness, may you sense the strength of the eternal hills and rest in the grace of the world. In failure, may you be upheld like the buoyancy of water and rest in the grace of the world. In limitation, may you remember that the choices may be as great as the expanse of the sky, and rest in the grace of the world. In insecurity, may you feel the solid earth beneath your feet, and rest in the grace of the world. In despair, may you hear the joy in birds singing and rest in the grace of the world. In fear, may you feel the warmth of the sun and rest in the grace of the world. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. So be it.
I'm so happy to be here. Okay. I have 3 readings for you this morning. The first one is a long one, so get comfortable. It's from an essay entitled Salvation, and it was written by the poet Langston Hughes. He wrote, I was saved from sin when I was going on 13, but not really saved. It happened like this. There was a big revival at my Auntie Reed's church. Every night for weeks there had been much preaching, singing, praying, and shouting. Then just before the revival ended, they held a special meeting for children to bring the young lambs to the fold. My aunt spoke of it for days ahead. That night, I was escorted to the front row and placed on the mourner's bench with all the other young sinners who had not yet been brought to Jesus. My aunt told me that when you were saved, you saw a light, and something happened to you inside, and Jesus came into your life, and God was with you from then on. She said you could see and hear and feel Jesus in your soul. I believed her. I had heard a great many old people say the same thing, and it seemed to me they ought to know. So I sat there calmly in the hot, crowded church, waiting for Jesus to come to me. The preacher preached a wonderful rhythmical sermon, all moans and shouts and lonely cries and dire pictures of hell. And then he sang a song about the 99 safe in the fold, but one little lamb was left out in the cold. Then he said, won't you come? Won't you come to Jesus? Young lambs, won't you come? And he held out his arms to all us young sinners there on the mourner's bench. And the little girls cried. And some of them jumped up and went to Jesus right away. But most of us just sat there. Finally, all the young people had gone to the altar and were saved, but one boy and me. Wesley and I were surrounded by sisters and deacons praying. It was very hot in the church and getting late now. Finally, Wesley said to me in a whisper, God damn, I'm tired of sitting here. Let's get up and be saved. So he got up and was saved. Then I was left all alone on the mourner's bench. My aunt came and knelt at my knees and cried while prayers and songs swirled all around me in the little church. The whole congregation prayed for me alone in a mighty wail of moans and voices. And I kept waiting serenely for Jesus. waiting, waiting. But he didn't come. I wanted to see him, but nothing happened to me. Nothing. I wanted something to happen to me, but nothing happened. Now it was really getting late. I began to be ashamed of myself, holding everything up so long. I began to wonder what God thought about Wesley, who certainly hadn't seen Jesus either, but who was now sitting proudly on the platform, swinging his knickerbockered legs and grinning down at me, surrounded by deacons and old women on their knees praying. God had not struck Wesley dead for taking his name in vain or for lying in the temple. So I decided that maybe to save further trouble, I'd better lie too and say that Jesus had come and get up and be saved. So I got up. Suddenly the whole room broke into a sea of shouting as they saw me rise. The minister took me by the hand and led me to the platform. When things quieted down in a hushed silence, punctuated by a few ecstatic amens, all the new young lambs were blessed in the name of God. Then joyous singing filled the room. That night, for the first time in my life but one, for I was a big boy, 12 years old, I cried. I cried in bed alone and couldn't stop. I buried my head under the quilts, but my aunt heard me. She woke up and told my uncle I was crying because the Holy Ghost had come into my life and because I had seen Jesus. But I was really crying because I couldn't bear to tell her that I had lied, that I had deceived everybody in the church, that I hadn't seen Jesus, and that now I didn't believe there was a Jesus anymore, since he didn't come to help me. My second reading is an old favorite of mine, and you may have heard it before, but it's a classic. It's by Annie Dillard, and it's from her book, Teaching a Stone to Talk. She writes, "Why do we people in churches seem like cheerful, brainless tourists on a package tour of the absolute? The tourists are having coffee and donuts on deck C. Presumably, someone is minding the ship, correcting the course, avoiding icebergs and shoals, fueling the engines, watching the radar screen, noting weather reports radioed in from shore. No one would dream of asking the tourists to do these things. Alas, among the tourists on deck C, drinking coffee and eating donuts, we find the captain and all the ship's officers and all the ship's crew. On the whole, I do not find Christians, outside of the catacombs, sufficiently sensible of conditions. Does anyone have the foggiest idea what sort of power we so blithely invoke? Or, as I suspect, does no one believe a word of it? The churches are children playing on the floor with their chemistry sets, mixing up a batch of TNT to kill a Sunday morning. It is madness to wear ladies' straw hats and velvet hats to church. We should all be wearing crash helmets. Ushers should issue life preservers and signal flares. They should lash us to our pews. My third and final reading is a poem by Theo Dorgan. It's entitled, Lifeboat, Artist Unknown. A wave comes tumbling from electric air. The maelstrom dark is hurling and pounding you round. You fear you'll ground on a lee shore or be battered down soundless forever into the swallowing, fathomless absence of Earth's light. You rally the crew by will and heart, by craft and order, the body's power of command. Somewhere ashore they are leaping from their beds. A calm voice on the radio is your lifeline to that harbor, where powerful engines are turning over, lines are being slipped, and the spray lashing your face here is sweeping the deck of the lifeboat, turning out for you. You hold on. You hold on. You watch for the orange flash in the thundering, climbing sea that tells you you are not abandoned. You are not cast out. A boat is coming to lift you home. Voices are calling as you pitch and roll, a net of voices reaching towards you. Dear friend we do not know, they say, hold on, stand fast. We are coming to bring you home. Are you saved? I'm sure most of us at one time or another have had someone ask us this question, are you saved? It implies a certain shared understanding of what is meant by that phrase, of what it means to be saved. Are you saved? If you reply yes, the questioner will most likely believe that you share their belief in the power of Jesus Christ to save us from damnation, to redeem us through his death and resurrection. Usually, they believe that this is the only way to be saved, and that anyone who doesn't believe as they do is lost. Now, if you reply no, you might become an object of attention. Perhaps like Langston Hughes at his aunt's revival. Your conversion a goal to be sought. Your soul the prize to be won. Are you saved? While you're certainly welcome here if you are, my guess is that for many of you, this idea does not really entirely capture your vision of the world, nor your beliefs about God or spirit, life or soul. And yet, how might ours be a saving faith? I want us to think about what it is that this congregation does. What can it do? What difference does this place and those of us who come here make in our lives and in the lives of others? How might it help save us and save the world too? Now, Unitarians and Universalists have a long history of a different view of salvation. The Universalists believed that all humanity would be saved, that a loving God would not condemn anyone to eternal punishment. They believed in universal salvation. And now the Unitarians believed that they were too good to be condemned. And they rejected the divinity of Jesus. Therefore, salvation was more about living a good life here on earth. As UU minister Reverend Dr. Jack Mendelson wrote, for us, salvation is not an otherworldly journey flown on wings of dogma. It is ethical striving and moral growth. I like that, ethical striving and moral growth. Now, there's a story about the Universalist minister Hosea Ballou. As one of the denomination's many itinerant clergy, he was riding the circuit in the New Hampshire hills with a Baptist preacher alongside one afternoon. They argued theology as they traveled. At one point, the Baptist preacher looked over and said, "Brother Ballou, if I were a Universalist and feared not the fires of hell, I could hit you over the head, steal your horse and saddle, and ride away, and I'd still go to heaven." Hosea Ballou looked over at him and said, "If you were a universalist, the idea would never occur to you." There's another story told about a young Unitarian Universalist who was visiting a Christian church when the pastor asked if she was saved. She whispered, "In my church, we aren't allowed to get lost." Now, Langston Hughes had an extremely painful experience when the more traditional manner of being saved didn't work for him. Clearly it worked for a number, not all, of the other children, but he fell into the minority that many of us also have fallen into. His sense of spirituality was different, and the standard Christian approach did not resonate with his own inner life. He was tempted to give up on religion altogether. I think we believe that our children should have other options. We design our children's religious education programming to allow room for different approaches and understandings, for questioning and exploration. We try not to allow our children to get lost. Lisa Miller, who's the director of clinical psychology and founder of the Spirituality Mind-Body Institute at Columbia University Teachers College, has been studying adolescence, depression, and spirituality for over 20 years. She studied children and youth and what makes them happy or unhappy, healthy or unhealthy. And she found that spirituality is a key factor. She just had a new study published online in the Journal of Religion and Health, and it shows that happiness and the character traits of grit and persistence go hand in hand with a deeper inner asset, spirituality. And this study measured spirituality as a deep spiritual connection with a sense of a sacred world. That sounded very UU. Her conclusion was that the single most powerful protection against depression and suffering is the spiritual self. Her research showed that kids with a strong spirituality have greater grit, higher grades, more optimism, and persistence than kids without a strong sense of spirituality. Teenagers who say they have a strong sense of spirituality are 80% less likely than the norm to have unprotected or dangerous sex, 40% less likely to use drugs. And again, personal spirituality that includes a direct personal relationship with nature, a universal presence or higher power by any name, has a clear correlation with physical wellness and recovery from depression and disease. She found that greater spiritual awareness produces the same readings in brain scans as recovery due to medication. She found the natural spirituality of children and young people can be encouraged and fostered through things like meditation or long walks in nature, where a sense of transcendence can be engaged. Parents can demonstrate approval for and model such traits as caring for others, empathy, optimism, the inherent worth and dignity. Oh, no, she didn't say that, but I think that should be on her list. I believe our Unitarian Universalist faith can help to save our children. Rebecca Parker, former president of Starr King School for the Ministry, in her book, A House for Hope, writes, "Innocence and purity are not states of salvation. Salvation manifests in wisdom, persistence, in not allowing evil to operate in its habitual patterns. It manifests as a solid sense of enough, gratitude for life's goodness, showing a humble capacity to be part of the web of life." Salvation. She reminds us that salvation doesn't just have to mean a hope for a heavenly reward, but it can be the gift of full aliveness, here and now. The restored and enlivened capacity to be in the world with wisdom. Such wisdom is not a personal accomplishment, but an achievement of life together in human communities that fosters astute attention to life in the present, that celebrates beauty and goodness, and that resists evil. She says, salvation is fully arriving in this life, turning our faces toward its complex realities and engaging our whole being in creative, compassionate, loving interaction with what is at hand. Salvation is not something one possesses individually. It is something one participates in communally, including in communion with those who have come before. Rebecca Parker's grandmother once asked her, "Do you want to know how I believe we are saved? We aren't saved by Jesus' death on the cross. People who believe that focus on hocus pocus and avoid having to live out the teachings of Jesus. We are saved by every person in every time and place that has stood up for what is true in spite of threat, like Socrates did, like Jesus did, like many others have done. We are saved by the communion of saints. They shelter us, and we have the opportunity to be in their number, here and now." I was raised a Unitarian Universalist, lifelong. And I admit that at times I have taken our saving message for granted. But 22 years ago, when Axel and I were pregnant for the first time, well, mainly me, but, you know. I came to truly appreciate my Unitarian Universalist lifeboat. At our 20-week checkup, the sonogram showed there was no longer a heartbeat, and we were devastated. Because of how far along it was, the doctor told us it would be best if we let nature take its course. So I was admitted to the hospital and lay there for 4 days, with all our dashed hopes and with my own grief and guilt. At one point, a nurse said to me, "You know, God only gives us what we can handle." And then she said, "And I know this could never happen to me because God knows I couldn't handle it." And truthfully, at first I felt like she had just stabbed me in the heart. Here, in the midst of my suffering, she was reinforcing the idea that it was somehow my fault, that if I wasn't so strong, this wouldn't have happened, because I could handle it, as if I had a choice. And then I got kind of mad. I thought, that's not my theology. I don't believe there's a personal God sitting up there somewhere dispensing suffering according to our strengths and weaknesses. I don't believe in a God that would intentionally snuff out a potential life, one that was eagerly anticipated and already loved, because I could handle it. And I was so glad that I had an alternate belief system, one that tells me that bad things happen, but to everyone, whether they can handle it or not, whether they deserve it or not. And good things happen too, to everyone. And that my beliefs about the universe and about life and love remind me that I have a choice as to how I deal with both the bad and the good things that happen in my life. That I'm not separate from the rest of life. And that I can continue to say yes, even in the midst of sorrow and tragedy and pain and guilt. And that love conquers all. This is the Unitarian Universalism that saved me. And there was another way that Unitarian Universalism saved me during that hard time. Because a number of our church members knew by then that I had been pregnant, they also then had to be told about the miscarriage. And it was absolutely amazing to me, the number of people, many of whom I thought I knew pretty well, who told me in numerous cards and letters and quiet conversations that they too had suffered a similar loss, some of them multiple times. And there was something so comforting in the fact of those shared experiences. Not so much because misery loves company, or even that someone else knew exactly how I felt, because of course no one does know exactly how anyone else feels. But more, it was somehow that this was not just my personal tragedy, but a part of the human condition. And that by sharing our stories and our pain, we could comfort one another and grow in our appreciation and love for one another. Elie Wiesel said, "Sanctuary is often something very small. Not a grandiose gesture, but a small gesture toward alleviating human suffering. Sanctuary is a human being. Sanctuary is a dream. That is why you are here, and that is why I am here. We are here because of one another. We are in truth each other's shelter." I recently heard UCC Minister Reverend Mike Piazza talk about the now common phrase, spiritual but not religious. Do you know that? I guess it's a common phrase on internet dating sites. If you know. SBNR, spiritual but not religious. But I really liked, Reverend Piazza said that he prefers religious but not necessarily spiritual. His concern is that spiritual but not religious, he says, is a form of cultural narcissism, and that we're not going to survive as individuals, spiritual or not. But he believes religious communities can save the world. UU Minister Reverend Forrest Church wrote, "Why then do we choose to join together rather than exercise our full freedom to believe what we will in the privacy of our homes on Sunday mornings? Simply because experience has taught us that we need one another. We need guidance in recognizing our tears in one another's eyes. We need prompting to raise our sights. We need companions in the work of love and justice to enhance our neighborhoods and strengthen our witness in the world. And yes, we choose to gather here because we know how easily we slip back into mechanical habits that blunt our consciousness. We need and know we need to be reminded week in and week out how precious life is, how wondrous and magical, how truly miraculous. Not merely to be reminded of these things for our own sake, but for the sake of our loved ones and neighbors as well. For without cultivating a reverent spirit, our lives and deeds will not reflect the highest of all human virtues, a reverence for life itself." I think most of us have had a friend or relative who tried to convince us of the great need to embrace Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. I've often tried to think of this gesture as being from a person who's convinced that we are on a sinking ship, and it's their job as people who care for us to let us know and to show us how to escape, to send us a lifeboat, literally to save us and save our lives. Understanding that helps me appreciate their concern for me, rather than just getting rather annoyed at their unwelcome proselytization and pushiness. But what if we too have a way off that sinking ship? What if our UU faith could save someone's life? Don't we owe it to others to make sure they at least know about our lifeboat? Truthfully, I think the ship is sinking. The captain and the crew are drinking coffee and seated with the tourists on deck C. We all need to be minding the ship and correcting the course. When do you wish you had learned about Unitarian Universalism? How many years were you in the wilderness? How many rays are out there still wandering? Okay, there's only one ray. But how many others? Longing for a religious community like this one, wishing they'd known about it years ago. Sometimes I worry we're a little bit selfish. We found this great place full of great people with not only the freedom but encouragement to follow our own path, supported by others in this lovely place. And sometimes we seem content to remain just as we are. No, I hear you protest. We want more people to come. We're happy to share what we have with others. We're not selfish. We're eager to offer this welcoming place to others. But what have you done about it lately? How many people have you invited to join us? How often do you talk to others about your Unitarian Universalist faith? Ray went 40 years not hearing from a single person about the Unitarian Universalist way of religion. How often do you pull down the dome of silence? Where would you go if the UU Church of the Monterey Peninsula did not exist? Where would you feel comfortable spending your Sunday mornings? Where could you go and not feel hypocritical? Where could you go where your input would be valued, where your questions would be taken seriously, where your individuality would be celebrated? Where else would your disagreement with the minister's position on a topic be so accepted and even encouraged? Where would you want your children exploring religious questions? Where would you feel comfortable discussing your agnosticism, your near-death experience, or your doubts about the virgin birth and original sin? Where would you get married or have your loved one's memorial service? Where would you be able to celebrate life's rites of passages using your own words, creating your own rituals? This is the only UU congregation for miles around, and I think that's a good thing. Because here we have to practice our true support for one another's differences. We are atheists and theists, agnostics and Christians, humanists and pagans, Buddhists and Jews. We are those who like lectures and those who like sermons and those who like discussion groups. We are those who like meditation and those who like prayer and those who prefer to do without either. We are great singers, and then there's the rest of us. And we need to find ways to work together, appreciating our differences and encouraging our growth and solidarity, supporting and caring for one another, building a loving community. Rebecca Parker tells us that good religious communities convert people to the way of life our society needs to move to, from believing that violence is redemptive to practicing justice and compassion, from going it alone to giving and receiving care from others, from isolating oneself in individualism to sharing work on behalf of the common good. Thich Nhat Hanh writes, "I hope to see communities like that everywhere, as a kind of demonstration that life is possible. A future is possible. A community that shows abundance of life, that is an example of the wholeness of life. This would be an eloquent sign of a possibility in the future." From our children's story, even something as big and important as peace begins with something small and precious. It might begin because of you. I believe we are here to be lifeboats for each other, to reach out and say, "Dear friend, we do not yet know. Hold on, stand fast. We are coming to bring you home." There are people out there who need our saving faith, and we need them. There are children with fears, teenagers with questions, adults with doubts, and so many who have no idea that a religious community like ours even exists, and would welcome them, fears, questions, doubts, and all. There's a whole world that needs to see what we can model here: support, care, respect, compassion, peace, and love. Let us take our light out from under our bushel. Let us reach out from our dome of silence. Let us make sure that all those who are struggling in the choppy waters of life can encounter our lifeboat. There are more lives out there that need our saving message and that can be saved by becoming a part of our religious community, and they can help to save us also. Together we can show that a world of wholeness, of integrity, of peace, and of love is possible. Together we can help to save the world. May it be so.